Yes, people. Yes, people. We are back with part 2 of the long Lartin edition of UK Prison Stories. Let's just get it on. What did we learn yesterday? That Jimmy Boyle, the most dangerous prisoner in Scotland, was allowed to come to Long Lartin to speak about the unit in Boyle and how it had helped create a better atmosphere for prisoners inside Scottish prisons. You do think, though, that if it's been broke for that long and they still can't fix it, why? What would be the reason if the prisoners are coming out with the same problems, the same issues in 1989 when I was 4 and now I'm pushing 40, they're still talking about the same problems and things have probably got worse, not better. Let's just jump straight back in.
Prisoners went off to lunch and then the forum could only resume when inmates went back to work. In the workshop, one inmate took the chance to highlight his grievances.
Explosion in a prison like this is present at any time, and it's one that I'm always concerned about. The restrictions after Gartree haven't helped, and indeed, because of a number of problems in the prison, such as the amount of drugs that are getting into the prison, there may indeed be more restrictions. I'm trying to hold that off. If I get a response from the prisoners, which indicates that the level of drugs is very low, then maybe I won't have to do what I think, as a governor, I've got to do, which is to control the level of both hard and soft drugs coming into the prison.
What are you talking about?
I wonder what they class as a lot back in 1989. Do you think if you put him on the landing nowadays and went, look at the amount of drugs now, it's not hidden. There'd be people hanging over the railings, there'd be geezers standing in their doorways doing the old head bobbing thing. Be another geezer having a mild case of myocarditis on the pool table. There'd be someone passed out in the shower, dropped down near the plug hole with all dirty pubes all over his face. There'd be parcels coming over left, right and centre onto the yard. There you go to him. What did you think was a lot of drugs in 1989? And what were those drugs?
Talking about is actually negotiating with your inmates.
Negotiating, I think that's a term that I wouldn't disagree with.
If I misbehave in here, let's see, I can go to the block, segregation unit. At the end of the day, they can cite good order and discipline, which is a catch-all which covers everything. If I swear at the wrong screw in the wrong manner, if I tell them to fuck off, I can lose 7 days remission for that. I couldn't imagine anybody outside having 7 days imprisonment for telling somebody to do that thing.
One of the most serious punishments is being put on Rule 43 in segregation or solitary confinement. The segregation unit has 20 cells. The bleakest is a strong box, a cell within a cell where the bed is a concrete slab. Prisoners are stripped, searched and observed from the side and from above.
Genuinely looks like a police cell, doesn't it? In a strong box, soundproof strong box. You know, you've got your big iron door that's not soundproof. If you kick that, they're going to hear it. But you're not making no noise screaming out of it. There's no gaps, no sunlight's getting through. All the sunlight's artificial. You've got those windows that are 10 foot in the air that are that thick, like thick magnifier light. You can't look out of them. You've got them little metal. You've got the concrete bed on the floor, which is a couple of inches off it, and you've got a blue mattress chucked on it, like the ones you used to do tumbling on in school.
In 1987, in British prisons, 1,406 men were put in such cells, and 74 in body belts, a modern form of straitjacket. For some, freedom is even more of an issue than complaints about discipline. After 15 years inside, John Walker of the Birmingham Six still has faith he will be freed.
Yeah, we'll get out, if the British government tell the truth. I can go home tomorrow. This gentleman can go home tomorrow, because they know we never done this. They know we've never done this. They're holding us. They have made us political. Nobody wants to know the truth. If they want the truth, give us a truth drug.
See, the fact remains is that they are never going to give in if they convict anybody. They're never going to be made, they don't want to be made wrong. And that's just simply how it is, you know what I mean?
A long gap in the day allowed visitors to take stock of what the morning revealed about conditions at Long Lartin and whether they encouraged reform.
It's not really getting to the real issue, and that is the them and us between prison officers and prisoners, trying to break down the sort of anti-authority thing, trying to build up confidence in prisoners, trying to get them to challenge their own attitudes. This sort of environment has got to make space for that degree of change. It's not overnight change, but unless the prison system tackles it, nobody else can. And I think that here, in this prison, there is definitely the ingredients for that to happen. It's now up to the prisoners themselves, because they're the main force of change. They've got to make the personal choices.
When I was inside, I was a rebel, because I was full of bitterness and hatred, you know, but I had to face myself. And I can speak from experience, the only time I made any progress was when I looked inward as to why I was in prison. And taking that responsibility of the extent of my crime, it's partly, I suppose, remorse, you know, because if you don't face it, you can't be really very remorseful. And from there, I did progress. I stopped hitting out at staff. I was terribly violent. I stopped hitting out at staff, and things went on better from there.
In the afternoon, inmates returned, and the forum split into 12 working groups to consider issues raised, such as the lack of trust, the lie-down, and preparation for release. We filmed 2 of these groups, each chaired by a prisoner.
Kevin Rawlings, I'm doing 9 years for importation of drugs.
Michael Keel, serving 14 years. I've served 8.5 years for robbery so far.
Errol Henry, I'm serving 18 years for rape. I've served 2 years so far.
Stephen Saunders, serving 8 years for armed robbery.
Joe Whitty, the Governor of Long Lartin.
Diana Ruth from Prison Reform Trust.
Todd Hogue, senior psychologist at Long Lartin.
Martin Kelly, 10 years, firearms kidnap.
Ivan Whitehouse, 12 years, armed robbery.
Arthur Southern, prison officer, Long Lartin.
Jeff Cheaton, 10 years, conspiracy.
Janet Harbour, prison visitor, Long Lartin.
Alan Bannerman, life, murder.
I think one of the things that came through this morning, well, it came through to me anyway, was that it's not often that we're portrayed as people. And this is one of the few times that we have a chance to do that. So I would hope that everybody acts sensibly and takes the opportunity to make something of this. Has anybody got any questions they particularly want to address to anyone?
See, Mr. Whitty, how can you trust a prison officer when he calls you for classes and you end up in a body belt going out of the prison? Where are you going to make the trust there?
It's no different than the fact that people can trust me, but I might be taking 28 days remission off them tomorrow.
The thing is, until we have some sort of say, some sort of a group that can actually sit down and discuss these sort of problems with you on a regular basis, that sort of trust or continuous can't be gained.
I think the point is, who's going to make the first move? It's up to you people to make the moves. We're just prisoners. We've got no rights in prison. It's for you to dictate the terms. It's for you to say how we move ahead.
And unless we get some sort of representation with you and through you, there's no way our voice can be heard in any way or form.
Yeah, maybe they still do these in the high security nicks, these sort of meetings. I've never seen one of these meetings. I don't think they'd be allowed nowadays. Prisoners do as they're told now. Like, they're meant to do as they're told. Yeah, do as you're told. Bang up. There's not enough screws on the wing. There's not enough prison governors floating around the jails to sit down and spend the afternoon chatting away to prisoners anymore. I mean, most people are fresh out of college or part-timers.
I come to this prison in January, the end of January. 42-day lie down. I was only out for 28 days. I come to this prison. I have a lie down. I was in your wing, Governor. What? Can you tell me what I was put on a lie down for?
From management's point of view, it is a means of keeping the wings at a reasonable temperature. There are times when we do feel that for whatever reason the balance on a wing is wrong, and we need a means of altering the balance to keep the wing in a state of equilibrium. And Tenet 74 is a means of doing that. I wouldn't expect you to agree with me on that point, but that is why it's there and that is why it's used.
I mean, basically, it's sowing the seeds of discontent. That's giving them no hope, no trust in the system.
If there were no Tenet 74, no lie down, and we had a situation in Long Lartin where we felt that on a particular wing, a group of inmates were generally misbehaving and making life difficult for the other inmates, how would you suggest that we deal with that problem?
You've got adequate segregation units where you can carry out, anything that you feel may need to be carried out on any particular case. If you feel that somebody's being disruptive, why can't you take them down the block, investigate that case, and go from there? Bring charges if there need be, or whatever.
I'm a member of the Board of Visitors, and so I stand outside the prisons to some degree, looking in on the organisation. And it does seem rather strange to me that we're not involved in the 1074 decision. It's an instrument of control. I take, as the Governor says, if they use it as an instrument of control of the discipline within the prison. Now, other instruments of control, like Rule 43, we have to monitor and have to endorse within 24 hours. I particularly do a lot of these endorsements and I investigate them closely. I think time has come when 1074 isn't an autocratic instrument of control. It's one where it should be monitored as it is anywhere else. And I think then we wouldn't particularly have an investigation in any depth. But somebody from outside would be asking the questions that the inmate is not getting the answers to.
Rule 74 has been used for prisoners that have protested, and it's been used as recently as a month ago when there was complaints about the food. Several prisoners were shanghaied, as we say, and the Governor issued a letter to all wings saying that he was trying to improve the food, but enough was enough. In other words, no more complaining. And if there was, they'd be moved out, and they were moved.
That still goes on. They get hold of the ringleaders, they find out who the ringleaders are, they pretend they're their mates, they get them talking, they let them complain, and then they get rid of them.
I had a lot of contact with John Bowden, initially settling him down, initially getting his trust, which he didn't trust anybody, and to a degree he still distrusts prison staff.
Do you expect him to trust you? When you're shouting for classes, then put him in a body belt and carry him out?
Yes. No, just let me answer that. You say he was put into a body belt and carried out. The reason he was put into a body belt was because he head-butted a senior officer.
What do you expect a man to do when he comes down for gym and he walks around the corner down there and there's about 20 screws pounce on him and say, come on, John, you're going?
Nobody pounced on him. He was asked to go down.
It's a known fact a man in prison is unstable. How do you handle that? With a body belt? Or plenty of choler?
He'd only gone out on a lie down and he was coming back into this prison until he head-butted that senior officer. He is the only one that is stopping himself coming back here. Nobody else. The control that we've got, we've lost for the time being. Whether we get it back with him or not is another matter.
Let's just say, the first thing you said, the control that we've got, not the trust or the control.
It's the same thing.
So everything seems to come down to pure control.
No.
Screws don't trust prisoners. It's sort of like, I don't know what the prisoners expect here. Screws don't trust prisoners. We're all scumbags in their eyes. We're thieves, we're murderers, we're robbers, we're junkies. We cause misery everywhere we go. Screws are straight 9 to 5er. They don't care about prisoners. So yeah, it is all about control. Trust.
Oh, it's not, maybe a bad choice of words then. The trust that you build up, you'll only get that with talking people, like we're talking now, and that you're talking and saying you want him with the Governor. That's the only way we're going to go forward. That is how I went forward with Bowden.
My probable date of release is 2003. There's no such thing as rehabilitation in the system, Jimmy. That's for the individual. You seek that yourself and find that yourself. The machine won't let you find that. I pulled the Governor here, Mr. Joe Whitty, 3 times and asked them for my date, and 3 times I've been pushed to the side. I've pulled the Lifers governor, Mr. Jerry Petrick. Can't get to see him. The new man, I can't get to see him. Now I have to visit my people. They have to come and see me. I've got nothing to tell my little mother, my little father. The man who I killed, I've got a conscience for that. But my people don't have to suffer. Wakefield, Guthrie, Long Lartin. Why am I getting other big ship-outs all around the country? I live in Norfolk. I live in East Anglia. I'm stuck up here again? No. The system is there to alienate you.
You've raised something which I feel is quite important in terms of the tremendously long time you're having to go look ahead to, or trying to block out. And on the one hand, it's no hope, but you've really got to say to yourself, in my book, because I had to say that to myself, I had to really bite the bullet and say to myself, right, I'm going to have to do this, and it's how I say, right, here's another, just say 10, 15 years to go. I've somehow got to make this time work for me. And what you've got to do is just the same way as people do in university. University is a time out for people, largely to think and to develop skills. And really what you can say to yourself, I can make this work for me, I can make it work against me. But don't think that you don't have power in what's going on here. You've got to say, hold it a second, pal. Keep putting the pressure on people at the governor, put pressure on the staff. Here's what I want, here's what we want to be a part of this debate. We want to have some say in our futures.
I actually petitioned to the Home Secretary about coming off Catty, coming out of solitary confinement my last 12 months, and it was all blanked. I wanted to come off Catty. I asked to go to a hostel.
It doesn't matter what I say to you or how I try to convince you, I'm not going to go anywhere or get anything. And when I ask when my first parole is knocked back, why it was knocked back, I'm told that's a secret. But only I can reform myself, but I can't be told how or when I can reform myself. Now that to me seems very, very strange.
I accept that, and it is something that somehow we have got to alter.
We're asking for the possibility of forming an informal group if necessary, but anything that will get our attitudes, ideas, fears, longings, whatever you want to call them, over to the man who runs the prison. And our unhappinesses, disappointments, the lot. It all needs to be brought out, discussed round a table between the staff and the inmates. It's no good the staff talking about the inmates and the inmates talking about the staff. We have to get together and talk about it together.
That is perfectly all right, until I have to say, no, you can't, or no, you can't have. Then I think is where the power game's in, because people then say, well, why can't we? Well, we want to. We want to push the barriers out. We want to do this. That is when, from a prison point of view, we get into very serious problems of control.
Then everyone reconvened for the group chairman to report back.
Prison itself for a protracted period is an abnormal experience. It separates people from reality, degrades them and brutalises, then spews them out into society again with nothing to show except bitterness, loss of dignity and self-respect. Far from rehabilitating prisoners, it leaves the majority of them marked for life emotionally. Breaks up marriages and causes distress by punishing family members as well as the offender.
The day had made inmates aware of more than just their own grievances.
By Mary Whitty about the prisoners, about the victims. Victims were invited here for this debate. They declined to appear. But I can assure Mary Whitty that most victims are on the prisoner's conscience of a night time.
If there's going to be any change, any reform in prison, it has to come from the authorities, because prisoners haven't got the power to do it. But if the prisoners want to force change, it's no good climbing on roofs, tearing up, whatever, because all you're doing is playing into their hands. You've got to do it the sensible way, in that you get yourself organised, you hold meetings like this, and you talk about it, and you make people aware of your circumstances and exactly what is happening in prisons. Thank you.
Joe Whitty had the last word. He voiced conventional thanks to inmates and visitors, but his final point was to stress where in a prison real control lay.
More than anybody else probably in this prison, I wanted John Bowden to be here today. But at the end of the day, again, unlike some observers, I have to make decisions for the good of the institution. And that was the decision that I made. I wasn't pressurized, and the Home Office know nothing about it, by the Home Office, nor by the staff, nor by the local branch. It was made solely and personally by me. I decided enough was enough, and he had to go.
The session ended at 4 p.m. The prison day is a cycle of work, food, bang-up. Inmates had to return to their cells till 6 o'clock, so we had to wait till then to ask if they had been convinced by the demand they take on responsibility. They accepted it, perhaps too easily.
Yeah, I'd be prepared to carry responsibility, and I've got to do something with my life. As the rest of my life I'm in these sort of places, I've got to live in these places. It's either that or take the pill.
I think the majority of us do know why we're wrong, why we're here, and we do realise that it's wrong, but we very, very seldom get the chance to put it right. And by the time we leave prison after being here years, bitterness creeps in and the situation doesn't get help.
More prisoners than people realise take responsibility for their actions. They're in here every day and they're reminded of why they are in here. It's simply through their crime that they're in here. There's no need to remind these fellas. They know. All of us know.
A lot of prisoners do regret. A lot of prisoners don't. A lot of prisoners do. A lot of prisoners are fully aware of what they've done as well. He's right. From listening to those prisoners, not all prisoners are thick and illiterate. You listen to Jimmy Boyle speak, the most dangerous man in Scotland. Very eloquent. Looks like a businessman. Given the chance, most of these people would be successful businessmen, but they've made a mistake and it's very hard to get out of the cat-A's and be left alone after that, innit? You can imagine. Anyway, if you enjoyed that, hit subscribe and we'll chat again. Adios.